Good morning, or good evening, or whatever time of day it happens to be. It's dark outside, who knows. Today I'm just doing a little bit of painting. I've got some Konflikt47, and I've got some Konflikt47, and I've got some Konflikt47, and I have something different. It's a walker for Konflikt47. Haven't actually primed this one, so I won't be painting that today. This is the one we did. We built this up in the previous stream, and I've been doing some work on the basing. Kind of like what I'm doing with this. Just to kind of emphasize that running pose. I've put some milliput in a slight curve and got these drag marks in there, because it's stuck its foot in and sprinting along. Need to build up this side a bit more, and I've got some a corpse to go in the front here, and then I'll cover it all up, and then I can prime it. Hello, Andre. How are you doing? Guten Abend. Guten Tag. Guten Morgen. But first, we can do some of the Schwertruppen. Actually, these are somewhat interesting, and by somewhat interesting, I mean no one actually cares, but I like this kind of thing, so I'm going to talk about it. It's my channel, you can't stop me. In a previous video, I painted up the officer, the armoured officer from first edition Conflicts, and I also did, at the same time, special edition model. This was essentially the last first edition conflict model they did, but it's very much the same armor. And then today, but hang on, hold on, because I've got 4 models, I can't run them as an officer, or I can run them as an officer, but I would have to leave one behind, and I don't want to leave one behind. So I've got 4 models. Yeah. The minimum squad size for an infantry squad is 6. Or 5 or 6. However many. It's not 4. So I cannot run these as an infantry squad, and there's too many of them to run as an officer squad. So what I've gone and done... Hello, Yuli. Is I have got these, who are the armoured crew for the Toad Schwerlight projector, I think it is. And I've essentially just tiny bit of a kit bash. I've given them all weapons so that they can be just different poses for the Schwer infantry. So this guy was leaning over the artillery weapon originally. I took quite a long time cutting into his hand to get him to hold onto the Sturmgewehr there, but he's clearing a jam or something, I think. I'm not sure. This one was really easy. I just cut the sling in such a way that it's going around his armour there. And he's got the binoculars out. And this guy, he's carrying a cable for the artillery piece, which I'm going to have to come up with some excuse as to why an infantry squad is carrying it rather than that. But he's got an MG42 for some fire support. Best kit bash of a Kazakh walker. Thank you. I think it's just... It wasn't actually a terrible amount of work. It was just cutting some of the hinges to reposition the legs. But yeah, I do like how this came out. I think I've said this 1,000 times. I don't like the very boring poses that Warlord put their mechs in on the website. And as soon as I don't like the model, I was like, I don't want to buy it. But then as soon as I get hold of one and I repose it, it looks cool. I'm like, well, why didn't you pose it properly, Warlord? Right, let's get stuck in. Let me know, audio check, Is my music at an appropriate level? Is my microphone at an appropriate level? I have my microphone a little bit further away than it usually is, but it should be close enough to not be an issue. A little bit out of focus down here, but some blue going on to the wet palette. Some grey blue. Andre says those guys are really kitted out. Really like those models. Yes. Certainly. 8 of Clubs says quite fond of infantry holding additional arms for the rest of the army. Yeah, it's definitely. I remember someone did a. It was a bit of a joke kit bash of an officer for bolt action. I think it was it was a German one because he gave them a Sturmgewehr. Listening full volume, can hear you, no music. Okay. Let's throw the music up a little bit more. And check that it is actually coming through. Yep, it's probably just very quiet. How's that? Yeah, so bolt action officer, German officer, has Sturmgewehr, MP40, a P08, and a K98 on all laying on the floor on the base, and he basically says, "I can bring whatever weapon I want for this model." Obviously, wouldn't. Can hear the music all good. Excellent. Yeah, so the model has on the base every weapon option, and so he can bring it as any weapon option. This brush, oh man, this brush is Andre can hear some music now. Good. Oh, Yuli says... Sorry, Yuli. Is that correct pronunciation? Yuli? Yuli Jabrovnik? I'm certainly pronouncing that incorrectly. I apologise. On the subject of powered infantry, if you had to design a Stahltruppen equivalent 7+ infantry for the Soviets, what rules and weapons would you add and how would they be different? I don't think the Soviets need it. I think the Soviets URSAs fill that role quite well. But if it was going to the Soviets, if it had to be Soviets, it's a good question. There's a lot of, I say a lot, there's a subset of mecha anime. Correct pronunciation of the first name. Thank you. Ah, good. I'll stick with that. Yeah, there's a subset of Japanese mech anime that was very popular in Russia. Obviously, this is much later than the 1940s. But they started doing like Soviet-styled mechs, and it was very like riveted plate, lots of sharp angles. But also, like the angle between each panel was a sharp angle with rivets, but the panels themselves were curved, and that's kind of a style in its own way. As for weapons, the Mach 2 or the Type 2, whichever one it is, Soviet infantry, they already have what's it called, the dual weapon pack, which is essentially like a mini autocannon or a anti-tank rifle. Ursus to me are the equivalent of Shrekwolf and Fraxis. I think the augmented infantry is supposed to be a different class. Yes, I see what you mean. The Axis are very greedy to have two straight away. Nobody else has two options for Armour 7 infantry. The Brits only have the Mark II automata. The Soviets only have the Ursus, and the Japanese have absolutely nothing. Give me some Armour 7 Japanese. Let me have some Super Samurai. How about I assume you've seen The Matrix, and if you haven't, go watch it. Mouse's gas gun, but instead of being like 12 bore or like a, because it was designed off of a tear gas launcher. But they were just using 12 bore blanks for the film. But imagine that design where you've got this big open drum, like ring cylinder. Essentially, it's a revolving cylinder, but just the ring. But instead of being 12 bore, you chamber it in 14.7. So, and then you give it a really short barrel. So it's a full auto, close range, very difficult to reload, but lots of firepower anti-tank rifle. And that fits the way that the Soviets would try to use that armor, because they'd stick them on a... I was going to say stick them on a truck. No, you stick them on a tank. You have them as tank riders as well. There you go. So you have them as tank riders. You drop them off. And they've each got, I don't know, 3 shots at +2 pen, but limited to 18-inch range or 12. I'm not sure. Man, armored suits tank riding would be amazing. And if you think that they wouldn't, you're wrong, because they absolutely would. It's a shame they wouldn't really be riding on a walker. Because the Cossack's too small, really, for, like, you could probably hang an armoured guy off the side somewhere like sit on the top or something, but you're not fitting a squad. Realistically, you're not fitting a squad on there. And the other one, the Mastodon, it's just too slow. Like, sure, you'd hitch a ride on a Mastodon to get to the battle, but as soon as you started hearing gunfire, you were like, right, let's go and get involved. I'm sure I had some... Excuse me for 1 second. Kitchen roll so that I can actually clean off this brush. Well, we'll see how long that lasts. Almost certainly not long. So should every faction get an Armor 7 like armored infantry unit and an Armored 7 monster unit? Because I kind of like bolt action in a way that everyone can sort of get everything. Everyone can get veteran assault troops, everyone can get solid riflemen with light machine guns, everyone can get transports and light vehicles. Some nations are more limited on bigger tanks, but for a lot of the time you can always find an equivalent for everything. Whereas in conflicts, there's a lot of like differences between the factions, and I kind of appreciate that. Not that you're forced into playing it in a certain way, but like depending on how you want to play, there is a faction that will do that right best, right? So I'm not sure. Should every faction get every option, or should they be kind of kept more distinct from each other? That said, I desperately want some Armor 7 in the Japanese. Because at the moment, oh my word. Oh my word, we're getting absolutely torn up. Right, binoculars guy. Just want to test something. If I paint that leg. Yeah, you can just about see it on camera. So I am very deliberately being inconsistent with this coat of paint. And that is because there is so much paint going on top of this in so many layers that this layer I'm doing here will not necessarily disappear. It's not quite that drastic, but it's certainly not going to make much of a difference in terms of it, kind of the opacity of this layer. However, by introducing the variants at this early stage, it means that there will be just more variety and variation naturally later in the paint scheme, and that's something I really like, especially in armored units like this. Oh, Yuli says, Armor 7 plus Japanese would be amazing. Also more melee walkers for them. Yeah, so apparently we're getting a new... we looked at that when we did the roadmap. At the end of the year, Japanese are getting a new walker, not just a redo of an existing one. Like, the Sasori is essentially a remake of the old Sasori, bigger and better, and genuinely very nice. I noted that it says for the Americans they were getting a walker, and for the Japanese they were getting a walker brackets new. So that implies that the Americans, and the Brits as well, I think, are getting an existing walker made in plastic. Might be nice to see a plastic Merlin, actually. I have a busted Merlin. I have the just the body section taken from the scraps bin at Warlord Games. Yep, that does the job. So I'm going to let those three dry for a little bit. I think the Americans can use a timeout for range upgrades. Axis as well. Let everyone else catch up. The just going to switch to my sharpest brush. Which will be that one. Yeah, Axis and Americans, they were the release factions. Axis versus Yanks. So it makes sense that they've got more options than everyone else. Alright, I just want to darken this a little bit. Is that too much? No, that's about right. Yeah, that's too dark. Yeah, Brits, Soviets, and Japanese can do with a few more. Especially the Japanese. I mean, I'd just be happy with a points rebalance for the Japanese, because good grief. Heuschrecker versus the Inago is painful. How about that? There we go, that's how I want. We were thinking of how to describe it, like a kind of a ghost, like a mech equivalent of the Ghost Squad. So it would have a like a mech version of Ghost Dance. There's a lot of extremely mobile stuff in Konflikt 47. Like, getting from one side of the board to the other is trivial. Hello, Ratman. How you doing? I have autofocus turned off. What I can do is set the focus there. That should be a little better. How's that? Like the look of the Japanese as a person looking to get into bolt action. How are they? In bolt action, the differences between nations are actually a lot smaller than in Conflict. Like you can effectively play any faction in any way that you would like in bolt action, because with the exception of certain factions having limited tanks. Other than that, basically any faction can play in basically every way. Japanese veteran infantry is definitely a good way to play. The Japanese have a lot of weird light tanks that aren't very good but are very cheap. And so having a kind of veteran infantry force and then a bundle of these cheap tanks rolling around can be very effective. I've had essentially a Chiha and a Type 94 for ages. I've now got a second Chiha and I have a Chinu. Chinu is the meme tank for the Japanese. So are these mutated soldiers or conscripted monsters? These are the Nachtalben for the Axis. And they are genetic super soldiers that are certainly not particularly healthy. Yeah, if you want advice about Japanese vehicles, Ratman's the one to go to, because he knows it better than I do. The one downside I would say with the Japanese for vehicles is none of their really light vehicles, so armored cars, tankettes, none of them have anti-tank guns. At best, you're getting a heavy machine gun, and the vast majority of the time you're just getting small arm, medium machine gun. Which in 3rd edition is painful, because that means you're halving the number of shots because it's a vehicle machine gun. Is it the... Ratman, you can answer this. Is it the Type 92 that has a light and a heavy machine gun? Because that's genuinely a good light vehicle. Eternal Rhombus, hello. Hey Ed, love the videos. Ah, thank you. Just modelled a linebacker and used your video in modifying the foot and leg positions as inspiration. Keep it up. Thank you. Yes. That was... just let me show you something else that I've been working on. It happens to be next to my desk. This is the Soviet Cossack renamed the Kazakh. And I've been doing a very similar thing for all of the hinges here. Well, I say all of them. This hinge and this hinge, and then once over on this side, just this hinge here. And I actually carved away some of this armor panel to make sure that this leg came all of the way up as much as I wanted it to do, because I wanted it to come all the way up to there. So I've carved away a little bit of this armor panel, and it also gives an extra glue surface. So yeah, repositioning legs. Plastic is super easy because it's really easy to cut and it's really easy to glue together. Resin, a little bit more difficult to work with, although it's really not that bad. Especially Warlord resin, because it's really nice to work with. Some of the nicest resin I've ever worked with, because it doesn't shatter. It's very kind of soft in a way, so you can carve out a curved cut much more easily than you can with other materials. That said, I have done similar modifications to, for those that remember for those that have been playing 40k for a long time, the metal dreadnoughts, Space Marine dreadnoughts out of metal, and the what are they called? The Wraith Guard, not the Wraith Lord, which is the vehicle. The Wraith Guard, which is the infantry for the Eldar. That was also a metal unit. So repositioning those legs, carving them up, cutting them with a Dremel in some cases, and then pinning and re-gluing them. So yeah, I've been at this nonsense for a while. Wait, what were we saying? I was answering someone else's question. Oh yeah, Andre. These Nakdalban are they're genetically enhanced super soldiers. Using Rift technology, essentially like distilling Rift energy and pumping it into the muscles of these guys. And in theory, it makes them not just physically strong, but also mentally very capable. But also it makes them just ridiculously aggressive, so they're very difficult to... or in the lore, they're very difficult to keep on track. However, there's no rules for that. They're actually very easy to control in the rules. I think the only units in Conflict that have any rules on how to control them are the zombies, the Tonkor and the Shibito. Everyone else is just like, you give it an order and it follows an order. Ace of Clubs says, how are the Japanese in Conflict? We are sorely awaiting a balance because, good grief. I love the Japanese in Conflict. The models are amazing. If you saw my video recently on the Ashigaru, there's some really, really good kit bash opportunities as well. But we are suffering. We have no Armor 7 infantry. We have no overcharge for rift weapons. So the Shiboru rifle and the Shiboru cannon have no overcharge. And both of those, the Shiboru cannons, to be able to use the rift ability, not the overcharge, which it doesn't have, but just the normal rift ability, you have to hit with both of its 2 shots, which is painful because most of the time you're hitting on 5s because you're moving, right? And with those 2 shots, both hitting on 5s, you have to use the rift die first. You have to choose that first, and then also hit with both shots to get the ability off. And it is just so difficult to do that. I've managed to get it a couple of times, but it's so inconsistent in comparison to a Schwerlight, where it's just like, oh yeah, I put a blast marker on the enemy unit, and every model is hit this many number of times. They are fun to play though. That is definitely the case. Dropping a unit of assault frames out of a truck into an enemy position and just absolutely obliterating them. Okay, my angry truck tactic. I've been using it in bolt action for ages. You put an officer and an assault squad of some description in a truck. You snap to action to move the truck. You jump out with the squad and shoot up the enemy, and then you jump out with the officer and shoot with the officer as well. And then at the beginning of the next turn, you start charging. Doing that in Conflict, there's one additional really cool thing that you can change. The the guts. So the officer can have a point of guts. So you snap everyone, you do what I just said, and then before you move on, you guts the squad back into the bag, because then you can charge. So usually you can't jump out of a transport vehicle and charge immediately because you're not allowed to charge from a vehicle. But if you guts the unit back in a bag, it's now a new order. Ratman, you have both of the Japanese walkers, and I have both of the Japanese walkers. What was I saying? Oh yeah, sneaky tactics. Yeah, jump out, shoot up the enemy, guts the squad, assault frame squad back in the bag, and then when their order die comes out again, charge with them. And Still Unsure says, how does the Japanese walker play? I like them, but yeah, oh, does he mean the Inago? Right. There's 3 Japanese walkers. There's the small Sasori, the big Sasori, and the Inago. I've got both of the Sasoris, one each. So does Ratman. Neither of us have the Inago. There's actually a problem with the Inago at the moment, and we need a points balance for it, because the Inago is a Heuschrecker from the Axis. It's the same mech, like in canon and in rules terms. It's nearly identical. But the Inago doesn't have the jump. The Heuschrecker has a jump ability similar to the linebacker. And so, other than the jump, they're identical. The weapon options, the weapon options, and the damage value and the movement, all of that is all the same except for the jump. And yet, the Inago, which doesn't have the jump, costs 100 points more, or it's actually more than 100 points more than the Heuschrecker. So that's not great. That said, once the points comes down, it is going to be a very, very good vehicle, because it has a standard medium machine gun. Medium machine gun? Medium anti-tank gun. So both of the Sasoris can take a light anti-tank gun, which is good. But going up to that medium is definitely an improvement. I lament for the Shubaru cannon. Running a fully Walker list, or a Walker heavy list for the Japanese, would be quite cool. I'm wondering if you do it with just a bunch of Type 6 Save the points with light anti-tank guns rather than Shiboru, and just run like 3 of them. Because how much is a Type 6 Asuri with a light anti-tank gun? 145 points? To guess, 145 points. So 3 of them with a command vehicle upgrade in a walker platoon, because then you can have another infantry squad. That sounds like a good idea. But running 2 Type 7s with Shiboru or a pair of Enargos. A pair of Enargos with the medium anti-tank gun with a points decrease. Because it should be something like 180 points with the medium anti-tank gun. Right? And it's 300 and something. Crazy. Nine with 2 commanders at 1500 points. I mean, I was thinking of a more reasonable list, but if you want to go crazy, yeah, absolutely can. Are you a 40k player by any chance? I remember having this conversation, not to poke fun. I'm not poking fun. I mean, I'm maybe a little bit poking fun. I had this conversation with someone about the about Konflikt 47 and the starter armies, and I was pointing out the different factions. We were in the shop at this point, pointing out the different factions, and they said, "Oh yeah, I like the style of the British. Like, how do they play? Are they really aggressive?" And I said that the automatons are more like the unstoppable, the slow but unstoppable kind of feeling. It was like, yeah, that sounds cool. I like that. I want that. I'm gonna buy the British. Should I buy 3 or 4 of the starter box? I'm like, no, dude, just the one, mate. Just the one. It's the 40k mindset. You just can't talk to them. Can't compete with it. Full Walker Tank Wars, absolutely. We are already thinking of that. Not played 40k since 5th. I haven't played 40k since 3rd. Well, technically I played a bit of 8. I think it was 8th. I stuck my nose in and had a go, and yeah, didn't much care for it. Horus Heresy with the bad version. Yeah. I heard that they were bringing back Battlefleet Gothic, and then they didn't. And I'm kind of glad, because Battlefleet Gothic is my favourite of the old Specialist Games line. And Corporate Games Workshop would just muck it up. And I'm happy for it to just exist as it is. Andre says, are all factions strictly the same as in actual World War II? Could you add other countries if you wanted, like Swiss or Dutch? So currently the existing rules are for the 5 main kind of factions. You absolutely can run some of the other factions as supported minor nations. And there's definitely been some people kit bashing all sorts of stuff. So, for example, the Italians aren't strictly their own faction, but you can play Northern Italians with the Axis or Southern Italians with the Americans or Brits. And so a lot of people have been kit bashing some of the newer models to be more Italian focused. And you just use, if you're playing North Italians, you play an Axis army, but with converted models that look more Italian. But you can do the same with the Finns, Hungarians, Turkish. Oh, loads of comments. Let me catch up. Still unsure says played bot action first and second. Dropped out due to the locals going full competitive, even at new player events. Yeah. We have, like, I'm quite lucky in that we have a very casual group, and it's something that I very much encourage is like friendly, low effort games with like unpainted models and all of this kind of stuff. Like you don't have to try hard to have fun. And we Nick, who used to run it, and Simon, who now runs it, were always willing to talk about throwing in game rules that are more about having fun than about setting up competitive stuff. So we have things like the Tank War and the Rattenkrieg that I've spoken about before, but we also have like 600 point, 800 point starter days that we run every now and again, so that new players can just kind of jump in. Eternal Rhombus says, that was one thing about your is Konflikt47 expensive video that I kept thinking. Price per model may be higher, but really recently acquired 500 point list for less than $200. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think that the quality of the models from all games is very good. The price is higher than I'd like because it's a new game coming out, and I assume they need to recoup it. I do not expect the price to really come down very much, if at all. But Warlord Games is much more likely to do that than Games Workshop ever would be. But certainly we're not going to see the constant price increases that we get from Games Workshop. Like, they put their prices up 5 times last year. It's crazy. Quarter to an eighth of the cost of 40k. Yeah, it can be. Very much so. And that's before you start thinking of horde lists. Like, go talk to an Orc player or a Tyrannid player about how much they're spending. It's crazy. Oliver Masters says, howdy Ed, hope the painting is going. Currently painting some Italian Centurions. Yes. Oh, are those the ones you posted recently? Because I said this before. I don't know. This channel is just me repeating myself constantly, so I may as well just kind of roll with it. For first edition Conflict, I didn't really play. I played one game, I think. I really liked the armored power suits, and so I didn't want to get a squad of all of them because that would just be very expensive, and I wouldn't be using the models because I didn't play it. And so I got the armored officers instead, because the armored officer, at the time there were £14. I think they're £15.50 now. They were £14 back then, and it's 3 models. It's a little bit more expensive per model, but I'm buying much less models, many fewer models, and I get to paint a variety. And that's where these guys came from. Because these are the German armoured officer, and I've got all of the others. But there was no Italian one. Because the Italian Centurion power armor suit came as an infantry squad, but it never came as an officer. Or like an officer version of it. And I was genuinely toying with the idea of buying a box of 10, selling off like 5 or 6 or 7 of them, and just keeping enough for an officer for myself. Converting one to be a little bit more fancy as an officer. And then like 1 or 2 or 3 others as kind of the bodyguards. Maybe. I have royally messed up that highlight right now. Yuck. Eight of Clubs says, which starter army do you think is the best? Yes. That's tough. No, it's not. It's actually very... There's an easy winner. There is an easy winner for that. The American box, you get 2 linebackers. So both from a money value and an in-game value, they're the best. Kind of no competition there. Brits, Japanese and Soviets are kind of here and there, and it's more about what you value more. The Axis one, if you like that big mech, the Panzer IV mech, then it's very good. If you do not like the big Panzer IV mech, then it is not good. I do not like the Panzer IV mech. In fact, I like it such a small amount that I sold it to Ratman. So he's got that now. Oh no. My painting handle is dismantling itself. Well, that's why. I happen to have a nail nearby. Will that work as a temporary fix? Ah, spring's coming out. It works. I'm actually surprised that that works as well as it does. As a side note, if anyone's interested in my painting handle, this is my own design of painting handle. And you can put the model on like this, and you can move it around, and you can hold it at nice comfortable angles, and you can just kind of rest your hand in a nice comfortable position and have the model in the right direction, turn it around without moving your hand, and turning it even upside down and painting however you like, in a really comfortable way. And I really like it, and it is up for sale on Cults 3D with all of the information about the springs that you will need, which is not that many. Just link in the description to that. Still Unsure says, picked up the British Galahad armoured platoon with command and a couple of squads years ago, as they look great. Never got the Tesla cannon gun crew due to cost. The new British Galahad SAS. Galahad SAS? Excuse me, what? Galahad SAS? Who are the Galahad SAS? I did not know. I've seen the new, like, standard Galahad models. I didn't realise there was a specialist version. Gonna have to look that up after the stream. Oh, well, we're talking about cool stuff. Oh, that nail's falling out again. falling out already. Ape Club says that's cool. Thank you. Not sure which thing is cool, but Eternal Rhombus. Galahad officer has a beret. Oh, Stellan Shaw says from the starter set, aren't they SAS? Oh, I see what you mean. As far as I'm aware, I did not see the term SAS associated with them. I just thought they were veteran, like veteran British Army soldiers. Who have been reissued the Galahad suits. Galahad officer has a beret, if that's what you mean. Everybody in the British Army has a beret. It's all about that drip, you know. It's all about that alley. Right then, back to the Schwertruppen. So I did actually watch my own video of painting the original ones, these guys, to remind myself of how I painted them last time. So I think what I need to do next is the panel lining. And if it isn't, oh well, I'm doing the panel lining. They look SAS to me too. I mean, it's not to say that they can't be used as SAS. There's no, if you look at the beret, there's no cap badge. So they're not actually any specific unit. And what I gather from that is that if you want them to be SCS, you can make them SAS. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any rules upgrades that you can take for the Galahads to really sell the SAS in rules terms. What options do they have? I actually don't know what options the Galahads have. I haven't looked too closely at their stats. Stellan Shaw says paint the beret the correct colour. Most weapon options used by most units. Always wanted a claymore armed flying Scotsman. There is someone who made a like an alternate version of the Galahad. I think there were the women troops as well. With it's a little bit Joan of Arc in a way, but they are like replacements for the British Galahads. And they made a version with the light machine gun, but another version with sword and shield, like a great big, good old fashioned medieval two-handed sword and shield. They were cool. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so that's the older Galahad. That's the metal ones. I also have those. I painted mine in the British Desert scheme. Very complex scheme to paint on infantry. And I hope when I eventually get to my British for Konflikt 2nd edition, that either I can get around having painted my officer in such a distinct and very difficult camo pattern and not paint that same camo pattern on an entire squad of infantry, or just not have any more Galahads. Yeah, it's fine. Firefly, Claymore, Scotsman, Tesla, Galahads. Do the Galahads get? Oh yeah, someone sent. Ratman has sent me the information. Oh wow, it's nothing. So you can't get any of the behind enemy lines stuff that the normal SAS would take, but you can give them stubborn, you can give them tough fighters. I mean, you could give them engineers, but I don't think it's worth it because they've got light machine guns, so they've only got one attack each in close combat. And yeah, disposable. Oh, speaking of, sidetrack. As if we're not sidetracked enough as it is. Recently I did a video on some little tokens so that you can put it with a squad to say that they've got the disposable anti-tank launchers. Well, I've been making some more. And this is on Cults 3D. These are disposable Piats. I can't remember the designer, so I'm going to have to look that up. But this is going to be for my British. This is a crate of disposable Piats. And you put this with the squad. So say these guys have the missile launchers. And if they expend them, if they roll the d6 to chuck out a bunch of them, you can then take that away, remove it from the board. Rather than gluing one of these to every single model and potentially like not being able to use certain models and getting yeah, it's just fiddly to do it that way. Easier to do it this way. I also have Soviet one, Sovlok. That is plastic RPG-7 from the Warlord Games Modern Military from Project Z, which I think is no longer made. It's a fantastic sprue. If you can get hold of one, because you're not going to be able to get them anymore. And it's got 84 and RPG-7 and like millions of different types of AK and M16 and SA-80s. A bunch of 28mm SA-80s. So definitely worth having. But the one that I was really looking forward to, because I play Japanese, is I made these for the Japanese. And I didn't just print off someone else's design. This is actually my design. So it's a launcher thing and a crate, or like a little carrier of rockets. So those will be basically, this is a token. Put that with a squad, put that with a different squad to say they've got the launchers. Shoot one a turn forever, or if you expend them all with D6 shots, you can just take away the token and put it aside. No need for the infantry to get the same paint job. Galahads are armored suits like tanks, so different paint scheme. Yeah, that's kind of my line of thinking. The classic British tank green, which the Ratman's link, for the second link, the old armored officers painted in that, and that works really well. I need to work out what colour I'm going to paint these cables. Because I'm not using this as the original weapon cable. So I don't know why this infantry soldier in the extra armour has picked up this massive cable. He is the light machine gunner of the squad, so maybe it's related to that. Ratman, is that the disposable Piat? Because that's... Thank you very much for looking up. Oh, actually, yeah. For anyone interested in the ones for the Japanese, I put these on my Thingiverse page. I think I have a Thingiverse link in my description at the moment. I'm not 100% on that. Suddenly a very nice and relaxing track for no reason. I'm tempted to just paint it steel. Paint it in a dull metallic. Probably. So this is why I paint the panel lining at the beginning of a paint job. I've been doing this a lot for Conflict. It's kind of accidentally become part of my Conflict style of painting. Is the normal way to paint a panel line is to do it at the end and be very, very neat. Very, very careful. And get just the right effect out of it. And ain't nobody got time for that. So I paint the panel line in really early. Essentially, I've done the base coat and I'm now doing the panel line. It's the second step. And you can see that it's pretty messy. It's all over the place. It's not neat in the slightest. And because I'm doing it so early on, it doesn't need to be. Because there are so many steps going on top of this. That it will just naturally be cleaned up. I don't have to do specific cleanup steps. It will just naturally be cleaned up by the following steps. I need to work out what I was doing with the in-edge highlight. Because I'm pretty sure I did an in-edge on this. I saw some absolute crazy one recently painting an in-edge highlight and an edge highlight on the same model, like in the same place, in the same parts of the same model. I mean, it looked good at the end, so I'm not complaining, but yeah. Just goes to show you can use absolutely any technique with absolutely any other technique, as long as you do it on purpose and you have a goal in mind. You can make just about anything work. I want to get some color separation for the leather as well. Everyone happily painting away at home? Surprisingly, it doesn't take that long. I mean, it is a time-intensive technique, but because I'm doing it early and because I can be messy with it, yeah, it just goes that little bit faster. Ah, power pack. I'm pretty sure on these ones, the power pack, yeah, you can't see the power pack because they've got the magazine pouches on the back, on the pack, as well as on their legs. Ah, the officer doesn't. Yeah. He's got some Sturmgewehr magazines. Even though this model doesn't come with Sturmgewehr, because he's crew for the artillery piece, he's got magazine pouches for the Sturmgewehr. And I think this guy, yeah, part of my conversion for this guy was to cut away the pouches, but he had pouches on his right-hand side, which means this guy's left-handed. Because he's got his pouches on that side. And what about this one? Yeah, he's got Sturmgewehr pouch. So everyone has Sturmgewehr pouches, even if they don't have the actual weapon. Right, am I done with you? Yeah, just about. Let's go over the filter systems down here. Because those will be metallic later. Still unsure, so sadly no painting. Building up Thunder Warriors from Stormcast Eternals, basing on Horus Heresy World Eaters. Are these the old or the new Stormcast? I think I've got one of the old Stormcast models somewhere. I converted it to a medieval knight. So I swapped the helmet out for a Bretonian helmet. And I think it had a hammer and a shield originally, and I've swapped out the hammer for a big old kind of two-handed sword. Mix of them, cheap secondhand. I mean, that's good. Variety is a lot of fun, and cheap secondhand is also good. Never going to knock that. There was a Sigma model I saw recently. It was in one of the orcs, or one of the not quite orcs, that was extremely over the top, and I liked it. It was like a sniper, but they had a ballista. And I'm just like, an orc sniper with a blister, that's funny. Because as if you can shoot straight in the first place. When you're only using the legs and torso, no need to pay for the rest of the bits. I mean, yeah, as I've touched on several times before over the years, so many plastic model kits comes with extra arms and extra heads and extra weapons and extra this, that, and the other. You end up just needing a few torsos and legs to make whole new models. Like, take a look at the Fireflies, the American Fireflies for Konflikt. You get 6 models on the sprue. You get 6 power packs, torsos, and shoulder pads, but then you get 9 sets of legs, you get 15 or 16 heads, you get at least 2 full sets of weapons, so 12 minimum. It's like for bolt action, there's I think it's supposed to be the Chinese torso pack. And I printed off a bunch of those, but the uniforms historically in World War II are so similar between nations that you can just use that kind of torso for essentially any faction, as long as you paint it in roughly the right scheme. No one's going to notice, and you can easily bulk up with a few extra riflemen. So what I was doing is, anytime I got a box of infantry, I'd build up a normal squad first, officer and all the HQ and all the weapons teams second, and then at some point I'd run out. I'd be doing some extra light machine gun teams probably, and then I'd get an extra 10 models out of it just with rifles using the 3D printed bodies and legs. And that's that. If the arrow is big enough, it's harder to miss. Absolutely. Unusual to get extra legs in most kits. Yeah, that is true. I think Conflict, the Stroll Trooping and the Fireflies are the ones that spring to mind the first, because it's 3 Stroll Trooping on a sprue with 5 legs and 6 Fireflies to a sprue with 9 legs, or 9 pairs of legs. I have seen other kits where you get a kneeling set of legs extra, and I have seen some kits where you get a torso extra, like with a torso wearing a jacket. The Ashigaru. Sorry, no, the Samurai that I used for my Ashigaru, they come with 1 extra torso that's wearing a jacket over the armor. And I have seen other things like that. So every now and again you get an extra torso or an extra set of legs. But yeah, it's not that common. I'm tempted to just print off a bunch of the Starship Troopers torso that I have and put those with the Fireflies and just use them as paragons. I need to... So part of my design for this is in here you would usually put a piece of filament, 3D printing filament, because obviously this is a 3D printed thing. You have 3D filament, so it's sized for that rather than needing a separate pin or anything. You just use the included stuff. It's a very sensible idea. But this is I've been using this for several years. Constantly, all the time. I've been using this one and this one for several years now. That one's got blue tack rather than a clamp. And so over that time, it has broken. I mean, the fact that it's lasted as long as it has is quite surprising. I think the only time that this ever broke was one of these broke, which is why I've extended it. This is much thicker than it was originally. Yeah, this is the extended one as well. Yeah, here we go. Covered in dust because I haven't touched it in forever, but you can see there it's been broken and I've re-glued it, but that's much thinner and I've made it much thicker now. You can kind of see what I mean. Anyway, that's not important. That's the wrong paint. That's the right paint. What is important is let's paint some Japanese models, because we've been painting Axis all day so far. I've got half an hour of stream left. So let's paint some ghosts. Look at that happy little guy with his diving helmet and steampunk revolving kind of drum magazine rifle thing. The Shiboru rifle, particularly these ones, are just cool. I do like them. As Tiki would say, banzai. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Simple Logic says, howdy y'all, hello. get some paint on the wet palette without blowing up the bottle. Right, given that this is my first ghost, which parts of the model shall I paint in which colour? So my paint scheme for my Japanese is blue clothing largely, with the big armor panels, the big kind of samurai style armor panels in brown. But I'm also doing several other parts of the model in that same brown, and I'm also doing a leathery colour as well, like a lighter, essentially just a different shade of brown. Let's switch to a not quite as nice brush, because I don't need perfect brush for this. I'm not sure if you believe this or not, and I'm sure you don't need to, but these 4 brushes are the same brush. This is my favorite brush, and you can see this is the most recent one, nice and sharp, and this is the one I'll be using. But then it goes to one that's really messy, and then one that's stained and shorter, and you can actually tell how old my brushes are. If I put the oldest and the newest together, you can see that that brush has used to be the same length, but the bristles at the end have snapped away, and so it's physically shorter. There you go, it's easier to see there. So that's the same brush, but this has painted a lot more models, and before long this will end up the same way. Simple logic. Got a Konflikt47 lore question. What is the relationship between Japan and Germany in the setting? So I will answer, however I will preface this with I am not an expert on the lore. But I do actually know the answer to this question up to a point. So historically, because everything in Konflikt starts off historically and then moves into the fictional setting. So historically, Japan and Germany were allied, and there was trade of information, trade of mechanical knowledge. Largely from Germany towards Japan, but that alliance was not particularly strong, especially as they're on opposite sides of the world, and of course, the ideologies did not align with each other. So it was never going to last very long. It's just that they never ended up really that close, so it didn't come to blows. In Konflikt, there has still been that trade of information, and especially it is going heavily from Germany to Japan. But after Japan opened up the Iwo Jima rift, sorry, suspiciously not opening it, definitely didn't open a rift on Iwo Jima. They opened a rift on Iwo Jima. The tensions between the two kind of degraded to the point where they stopped really trading information. So Germany started by giving information, and that's why so many of the Japanese options are based on an Axis option. So the Sasori is based on the Spinne. I actually don't know if the Type 7 Sasori is based on a Vogelspinne or if it's a scaled up Type 6 Sasori. But either way, it's based on a Spinne in the long term. The Inago is a Heuschrecker with the jump pack removed, and the Shibito are essentially the same as the Totenkor. However, I think the way that the lore for the Totenkor and Shibito works, it's almost irrelevant about who came up with it, because it's just one of those things that happens. Rift energy around corpses makes them get back up. So it doesn't matter who came up with it first, because it just kind of happens. But when the Japanese started working on their own stuff in Iwo Jima, particularly the ghosts that I'm currently working on with their stealth abilities and their teleportation as well, the information trade between the Axis and Japan kind of fell apart. And so none of the stuff that Japan came up with went the other way back to the Axis in Germany. So you can, if you wanted to, ally an Axis and a Japanese force. That would not be unreasonable. However, if you wanted to have them fight, that would also definitely be appropriate. Hopefully that gives you a little kind of discussion on the relationship between those two. There's obviously way more to it than that, but like I said, I'm not an expert on the law. Andre says, love the paint handle. Wish there was a brush handle that I could put different brushes on to make them easier to hold. That can be achieved. What requirements do you have for a brush? Got it. Not really allies, not enemies yet. Yeah, kind of that, yeah. The thing with Conflict is it's very deliberately written in such a way that anyone can fight anyone, including themselves. So you can have Imperial Japanese Navy and Imperial Japanese Army fighting each other. You can have the Green Volt versus Wehrmacht, and just using the same units. Right, so that's the armor panels and the weapon filled in. We can definitely put a bit more in this brown. I don't want to go overboard, but I think I've got plenty of space to go. So I base all my metallic in brown as well. So we're going to have to make sure I don't mix that up. So this is going to be metallics. Still unsure. 3 print handle that you put the brush into could work. So how big of a handle are we talking? So is it that you need, because it's a very thin thing and it's very hard to pinch onto a handle, so do you just need something that's like that thick, for example? I don't have anything really to show it, but something that you can hold on to that's this thick. Do you need flat surfaces? Because a round things roll, whereas a flat thing can flat edges can hold it in the specific orientation that you might need. Because what you could do, because we used to do this with pencils back at school, just wrap them with tape. Just wherever it is that you hold it, wrap it in tape until it gets thick enough that it's comfortable for you to hold. And similarly back here where you rest it against your hand, if you need to extend that out, you can just wrap tape around it to make it thicker. Once you work out what shape and how big it needs to be, then you can very easily make a modification for that you can apply to every single brush. Tape's obviously like a quick jury-rigged answer that gives you the measurements you need. A spear. On my old podcast that I used to have with Ratman many years back, our thumbnail was actually us waving paintbrushes the size of spears at each other. It was good fun. Trying to decide if I want any more to be brown. I'm wondering if doing the these on the legs in brown would work. I don't want to go too far, but I think I've got enough room to do that. I'm definitely going to be painting the visor probably in green. The helmet can be blue, and the body can be blue. The arms can be... Yeah. Let's just get this. Banzai spear. Seen a few brushes with bigger handles. One's even molded into a tri-point. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. It's have a look at... I can't remember what they're called, but it's like writing aids for school kids. And it's like a rubber triangle pad that you put over a pen or a pencil, and it makes it much easier to hold. Most commonly used in schools, but I'm sure there's 1,000 variations of it. Is that an armor plate or gaiters? I'm not sure if it's actually armor, but it doesn't have to be armor to be painted brown. They're not gaiters as such, because there's no strap going from them to the boot. They're more like greaves. Greaves are on the arm, aren't they? What's the leg equivalent of a greave? I don't know. Well, it's decided they're going brown. Have some polymer clay you could fiddle with. You guys have good ideas, but I'd like some sort of holder I could put different brushes in instead of modifying every brush. Yep. Well, once you work out the size you actually need, the size and shape that you want, creating a like creating that shape that you need and then having a channel through it that you put a brush in with some form of clamp that you can release to change brushes isn't necessarily that difficult a thing. I get not wanting to go through the effort of modifying every brush, but there are some of these modifications that are actually really easy to do, and you could probably do like 10 brushes in a few minutes. This is right underneath the base. Can't reach it any other way. That does that. Next. This is my favourite one of the ghosts because I shouldn't have it. It's the illegal one. So a lot of people were getting wrong arms with the ghosts, which is a bit of a shame. There was definitely a lot of rushing on Warlord Games' parts to get these out on time. And I appreciate that effort was made, but mistakes can happen when you are kind of rushing like that. But in this particular event, I think I kind of won on that because this guy is supposed to have a scope on his rifle and is the only one that's supposed to have a scope on his rifle. But I ended up with 2 rifles with the scope, so I ended up with his hands and weapon twice. And I got the correct number of arms, which means I was missing one of the other ones. Well, I had a look at this. I had a look and sorted them all out, and this is the guy that was missing the arms. And so I gave the scope rifle to him because I just about managed to make it fit without even, like, I didn't even gap fill. Like, that's how well it fit without even trying. I could have put some milliput up in there, but that means that this guy firing from the hip with a scope is funny. Yeah, no worries, Andre. See you in a bit. Suffering with this brush today. I think I need to acetone this brush. I'm pretty sure that this has paint up in the ferrule. Certainly feels that way. Yeah, these guys kind of come out really nice. There's some gubbins on the chest of these models. How should I paint all that, I wonder? I don't know. That's not for today. That is for post-wash. And running out of paint. Ah. See, I don't necessarily have to be neat, but I can do better than that. That's taking things a bit too far. There we go. That's better. Yes, all the gubbins on the back. That will be metallic. I have kind of annoyed myself with the metallics for every bolt action army, because I've very specifically chosen, for some reason, to do every single, like, to paint every single army in a slightly different style, particularly the metallics. So all 6 of my bolt action factions, the metallics are painted in 6 different ways. And I now have to keep that consistent throughout all of my conflict forces. And so I have to remember 6 different methods for when do I put the metallic on, when do I put the wash on. Actually, for my Soviets, it's all non-metallic metal. It's a very simple, cartoony non-metallic metal, but still, it takes a bit of effort to do. For my Japanese, it's paint it brown, kind of very roughly go over it with a very bright silver, and then a medium kind of dark brown wash. For the Germans, it's the darker metallic with a black wash. And for for my Italians, it's grey primer, black wash, and then silver on top. No, it isn't. I can't remember. I have to remember all these things. Simple logic. What is your favourite army for conflict so far? I've only really played the Japanese. I've built... actually, yeah. Now that I've done the Cossack... Yeah. The Cossack has made almost as many appearances as the models I'm painting in this painting stream. I've painted... I've built something for every faction now. But I've only played as the Japanese so far. And... yeah. The only games I've won are against other Japanese players, because our points values and our army list is not favourable at the moment. I've genuinely got a assault frame spam list for the Japanese that I want to try. Because the assault charging with assault frames, especially if you can use an officer in assault frame as well as a squad in assault frame together, it's just about the most powerful thing we have. The Shiboru rifles and the battle frame with Shiboru, they're a good middle ground shooting unit. Right, they're not super powerful, they're not super weak, they're good solid middle ground. Recommend you have some in your collection, but they're not game breaking. The assault frames, they're also not game breaking, but they can be much more effective. Oh man, I made a mess of that. Yeah, this brush is getting acetoned. Andre says, have you used your anti-tank dogs yet? I have. If you have a look at my live stream for the Rattenkrieg battle report, you can see the games that I played with the anti-tank dogs. Fortunately, I got them... That game was just before the nerf for the anti-tank dogs. However, my 3 opponents that day, none of them, not a single one, took any vehicles. And so they were a very, very expensive 4-model rifle squad. Because if the enemy doesn't have a vehicle, they are literally just... The handler just has a rifle and they are just a rifleman. He's got a thing on his helmet. No one else has a thing on their helmet. He doesn't have a thing on his helmet. He doesn't have a thing on his helmet. He does. Just him. Squad leader? He's pointing. Pointing means squad leader. And I'm going to paint that thing on his helmet in gold, to indicate that he is, in fact, super important. Yes. All done. Rapidly approaching 9 o'clock. And that's 2 hours of the stream. So, I'll probably wrap up at 9 or just after. So if anyone has any questions, any comments, any whatevers, post them now. And I'll answer what I can before we end the stream. Whoops. Bit of overbrushing there. That's the thing about these brushes. I love these brushes, but they do not last long enough. Right, they are a short-lived brush. Simple logic. I know 40k isn't your forte, but as much anymore. But are you hopeful or pessimistic about 11th? I honestly do not care in the slightest about 11th edition. I have not played properly since 3rd edition. And I genuinely think if Games Workshop disappeared off the face of the earth, the wargaming hobby would be improved. The problem is that especially with this cycle of editions, it is just an excuse for Games Workshop to charge you to buy the book you already bought 3 times. And it's kind of unnecessary. In fact, it's extremely unnecessary. So yeah, rapid editions in games is a problem, and it shouldn't be accepted by the community, and yet it is. Like, look at Bolt Action. The second edition Bolt Action lasted over 10 years. And it was updated during that time, but you didn't ever have to pay anything for it. It was just keep track of the errata. And it's only when they wanted to do a kind of a complete reset and tidy everything up that we got 3rd edition Bolt Action. And similarly with Conflict. Conflict's actually different because Conflict changed hands, because it was a Clockwork Goblin? I'm not sure if that's right. It was another company that owned Conflict, and Warlord Games were making the models for it. But then Warlord Games bought Konflikt47 outright and started working on a 2nd edition of the game completely in-house, rather than the other company doing the rules. So that makes more sense that a new edition came for that. Your 9 o'clock is 10 for me. Good time to call it quits. Bye, people. Until next time. Yep. See you later. We've got one more model in the Ghost Squad to get this armor color on, so we'll get that done, and then I'll finish up. Bum-ba-dum. That is too thin. That is flowing far too much. That's better. Just got a little too much water on the paint there. Ah. And then accidentally splodged paint all over his leg. There you go. If ever you want to know how to fix a mistake, if you knock your brush against a model or paint all over an area you didn't want it, the first thing you do is just stick your brush in your paint water and throw loads of water over the model. Just like I did there. Because if you can stop it from drying, it's very easy to wash it away. And then you can just add more water and rinse it off, and more water and rinse it off, until you're just kind of adding and removing water rather than paint, thin down paint. Not sure how well you saw it, because I was too busy fixing it to check about camera angles. Oh, there's some of that armoured leg underneath the model is never going to be seen, so I'm not going to bother painting it. Hello, Ryder. We were just about to finish up. I was just finishing this model. Can chat for a minute or two, but then I'll be finishing up. Yeah. To be honest, the Tank Wars live stream is just me complaining about the rules of Tank Wars. Or not the rules of Tank Wars so much, but just the nature of it. In bolt action, tanks aren't particularly good. Like, the movement and the damage to vehicles rules, I like how all of that is. But the problem is that a tank basically just fires one shot per turn from its cannon. Right? Sure, you can have a machine gun here or there, but the reason to bring a tank is for the cannon. And if you're rolling one shot from a cannon, you're just rolling one die. And it's so easy to miss on one die, especially if I'm rolling it. Because I will happily, if you give me like 10 d6, I'll roll them and get an average roll. If you give me 1 d6 and get me to roll it 10 times, I will probably roll a grand total of 20. Or less. Especially in one of the games. I'm sure you'll see it when you go through. I just had the most awful luck. Rolling one shot at a time and it's just miss, 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 miss. It was very disheartening. Google Blitz. Yeah. I mean, I've got a whirlwind. 8 shots from a whirlwind. That's great. Yeah, these guys are still looking pale because they haven't had the wash yet. Same with these, actually. The Shred Trooper. This guy fixing the jam. Yeah, we can see that panel lining I did. It's not particularly dark because it's just one layer of that black, kind of charcoal black paint. But once I put a black wash over this, or a mixed wash with black in it, that's going to darken down really strongly. And these guys. We didn't do much on it. We just did the trousers. We did the shorts. We just did the shorts on these guys. Oh yeah, Ryder, there's a spoiler for the Tank War event. There you go. That's how it's coming along. You'll understand when you get to the end of the live stream, but that's how it's going so far. That's the Cossack renamed to Kazakh, which I find very annoying because the Cossacks and the Kazakhs are two very different groups of people. But this vehicle was renamed from the Cossack to the Kazakh for some reason. Alright then. As it's now late o'clock, some painting has been done, some chatting has been done. I'm tired, so I'm going to go and chill out for a bit. You can all do the same. Thank you very much to everyone for coming past. Thank you, Ryder, Andre, Simple Logic, Still Unsure, Yulia. Ratman was here as well, Eternal Rhombus. 8 of Clubs. We had quite a few people today. I'm not sure I'm not sure which of my live streams has been most successful, but yeah, quite a lot of people today. Right then, in which case, thank you very much to everyone for coming past. I have some work to do for this week's video on account of I haven't worked out what the video is and haven't filmed anything for it yet. I have a couple of ideas. I just need to pick one and get stuck in and do it. I definitely have these on the way. I showed these earlier in the stream. So I did a video recently on upgrade tokens for squads, and I've just done some more. So this will probably be a very quick video just to say I've done some more. So that's the British disposable Piat. It's the RPG-7 for Soviets, and this is my own launcher for the Japanese. If you want that, that's on my Thingiverse page, so you can grab the rocket pack and the launcher itself. I've also got a Shibito, Daughter of the Motherland. So a zombie Daughter of the Motherland to paint up. And I've also got, from Ratman, we got the Soviet infantry sprue. I think I'm going to save these for a little bit, because I've got Ratman's also getting the new Japanese sprue. So if I get one of those from him, if I just steal it when he's not looking, then I can build. Then I can do a video showing. Here's 2 new sprues that are replacing old sprues. That's kind of a nice idea for a video. But the Soviet one comes with an arm holding a chicken, which is fun. This guy's got lunch, and then a dog, which is nice. I've actually got a whole pot on my bookcase of unpainted models back here. Hundreds and hundreds of unpainted models on that bookcase. I have a pot specifically for animals. So I've got dogs and cats. I've got a fox with a fairy riding it, which is a fantastic little model. I've got some other things as well. I've got a bunch of rats from Warhammer Fantasy back in the old days. Yeah. Those are more for basing than for actually being models in their own right. Anyway, I've talked on too much. Thank you very much to everyone for popping past. I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and I will see you next time.